Thank you, Manish. Uh, we'll quickly move on to our next session before the tea break, which is a panel discussion, and I expect it to be very vibrant and interactive because we have found a new moderator for this. I will introduce him in the due course of time. And the panel is on the topic of embracing new ICT in education. Are we ready yet? What are the real end-to-end technical, operational, and financial challenges while embracing technology in education? What are the possibilities to create a favorable environment for successful and effective integration of technology in education? These are some of the challenges that the sector is facing, and we are all here to find out certain viable answers to these questions so that we can move forward in our institutions. And the panelists for this session are, I would like to invite them one by one. Mr. Ramesh Sharma. Mr. Sharma is Regional Director, Indira Gandhi National Open University. Can I have Mr. Sharma, please? Dr. Sharma is working as Regional Director for Indira Gandhi National Open University. He has been involved in the planning, design, and development of teaching and learning materials for IGNOU, MP Bhoj Open University, Vardhaman Mahavir Open University, Rajasthan, and Maharshi Dayanand University for over 2 decades. The second panelist for today is Ms. Kirti Tripathi. She is the Head Curriculum Development and Technology Integration at the M&T Group of schools. She works in the area of teacher preparation for ICT integration in education, advocates for the use of technology in day-to-day teaching learning practices. Welcome, ma'am. The third panelist is Purnima Walaithan. Ms. Walaithan has a master's degree in education and has been a learning design professional for over 20 years. Beginning her career as a teacher initially, she soon moved into the e-learning field and has been instrumental in setting up instructional design systems and processes in many organizations such as NIIT, Knowledge Platform, and Hurix. And the fourth panelist is Sushil Arya. Sushil is from IBM India. So welcome all the 4 panelists here. And to moderate this panel, I have Mr. Varadarajan Sridharan. Varadarajan is an EdTech Fellow at Education Technology and Management Academy, ETMA, a premier education R&D non-profit run by Professor Mukhopadhyay, an EdTech researcher with over 10 years in IT with Fortune 500 US clients. He designed a tablet-based learning ecosystem for his erstwhile mobile learning startup. He is the first Indian to be trained by ADL in their next generation online learning framework called Experience API. So over to you, Varadarajan.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, very distinguished panel. Good morning, sirs and ma'am. The panel that we have in front of us is embracing new ICT in education. And are we there yet? Are you ready? Are we ready for it? So I just want to start off with a small note here so we can kind of set the mood for the panel. I see technology in education as a group of 3 things. One is technology for education, technology in education, and technology of education. I think to make it very simple, technology is basically nothing but a fancy word for tools, fancy word for good processes. So if you look at technology of education, every educator already knows the technology of education. The pedagogy that we are talking about, the andragogy, the heutagogy, whatever, different methodologies that we follow, those are all technology of education. And many of the academic leaders here would have heard about technology for education, which is the enterprise ERP systems, payment systems, admin systems, and these things. We are basically in an era where we are seeing an influx of technology in education. We are talking about MOOCs, we are talking about social learning, we are talking about gamification of learning. Different aspects of technology in education are actually propping up. To fundamentally lay the start for the conversation. The whole purpose of all that we are doing here with using technology is to make the learning, what I believe, make the learning move away from fragile learning to a lot more permanent learning. If everybody has read about Salman Khan's work, I recommend that book. We need to look at how we can use the technology in education to actually move away from fragile learning, where we put the learner in the front seat. So there are many challenges in front of us for these challenges, like we have very inadequate research or resources or best practices to guide us there, versus when you say technology of education, we've got years and years of research. Academia has come with a lot of work there. There's a lot of inequity or inequality in terms of involving the teacher. How do you involve the teacher who is not that technology savvy in the process? How do you basically give them the professional development? And there's also the question, India being a conscious nation, how do you basically go within the budget, which is always a problem for us. So to start off, I think we've got phenomenal platform laid for us with a lot of jargons that we are seeing, MOOCs, flipped classrooms, and all that. We have on our panel Miss Kirti, ma'am. Good morning. Now she's got a background in integration of technology for Amity Group of Schools and curriculum. Ma'am, I would like to know from your experience with all this influx of technology, how is it being as somebody who's actually delivering to the end user? What has your experience been, and what are the challenges that you're facing?
Thank you very much. Good morning to all of you. Since I have been practicing really with the end users, really dealing with the teachers, and a lot of my work is with the teacher training and day-to-day, how they are going to integrate technology in their day-to-day classroom practices. The major challenge which I felt, if I talk about today, the major challenge which I see is even today, even in good schools, if I see the teachers are not very tech savvy, and there is a huge gap between a teacher as well as learner. Learners are very tech oriented, teachers are not at all. They still have lots of fear, apprehensions about using technologies. And we being a part of one of the good schools in India, even with my school, I see around 50 to 60% teachers have got that kind of a fear of using technology. So, major challenge which I feel in this area is how we can prepare our teachers. Because if we talk about technology integration, unless until we don't integrate technology with right kind of a pedagogy and right kind of a content, and how the teachers are going to deliver that entire lesson in the classroom, these talks really fail at some end if we really don't talk about the ground reality of teacher preparedness. So this is one of the main challenge which I'm facing, and I'm working onto it, where we have to really prepare our teachers to use the technology. So as far as professional development programs for the teachers are concerned, if I look into, if I talk about, theoretical framework, DPCK model, which is given by Kohler and Mishra. According to this model, you have to have your technology integration has to be very much seamlessly integrated with the pedagogy and the content. So the all these teacher training or professional development programs have to be rightly developed so that they can train the teachers not only onto the technical side of the technical usage or the operational usage of the of the computers. Apart from that, they should also know how they can integrate it in their regular classroom. That's one thing which is very, very important. Recently, we have, Dr. Pant has spoken about MOOCs. As in my personal opinion, as far as if I feel that, since I'm dealing with the school teachers, MOOCs offer, I think they have they offer a great future for adult learning. If I think in terms of a teacher training, those areas, MOOCs can be really beneficial, and maybe in the university education they can be really beneficial. But for the school education point of view, if I see there is the one factor which is going to be very, very important to look into is the motivational factor of the students. So at that, I'm practicing teacher also, so it has become difficult. Many a times you have to really force the students to learn. So those are the, I mean, as far as, you know, aspects of university education, definitely we can have MOOCs. We did try about flipped lessons also in some of our teacher training programs, where we have introduced a concept called project-based learning. There, the introduction of the project we did in a flipped manner, where students were, you know, have to, any particular lesson has to be replaced by conventional model of a teaching. It needs to be replaced by a project-based, where children were asked to go through the introductory part of the lesson on their own, and the activities or the project which have been designed for that particular lesson were being taken up in that setup, in the classroom setup where teacher has, and that has really shown tremendous effect, and we have really seen lots of student involvement in that particular area, and teachers have also appreciated. Initially, a lot of teachers had got lots of apprehensions that what, as a teacher, what am I going to do in this? I mean, I had lots of trouble while I was introducing this concept to them. But lately, once they have gone through the process once, they have understood and they have really enjoyed, and we came up with a very good, people have appreciated, all parents as well as students and teachers have appreciated that effort. So the point here I wanted to talk about is as far as professional development programs of school teachers, or, you know, in fact teachers, it is very important that we have to relate the two things. I mean, only giving them technical background will not help. We have to really focus our professional development program in terms of integrational learning. We have to talk about how to integrate technology into a right way. Thank you.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic that you've actually brought up the part of TPAC. TPAC is a very wonderful framework that is used for technology integration in classrooms. Just take a small add-on to it. TPAC talks about how you integrate technology into the classrooms, but how you integrate technology into an educational institution, which involves more than a classroom. There's a fantastic another framework by Dr. Sam Punitendra called SAMR, Substitution, Augmentation, Modification, and Redefinition. You brought a very interesting point, which is technology has been very easily or maybe quickly adopted within the university segments, where you're talking about adult learners, andragogy. And we have an expert here. Sir, I would really appreciate your views on, you've been using technology in IGNOU for quite a long time, and if you can share that insights with us.
Okay, thank you, Vardarajanji. I think let me discuss it in this reference of two important reports which are consulted worldwide, globally. One is the UNESCO's the 11th EFA Global Monitoring Report, which has been recently released, in which very interesting finding has been pointed out that universalization of education won't be achieved until next century. And there have been serious concerns raised about it, about the poor quality of education and what are the various factors which are impacting factors on that. And there is another report by World Economic Forum. Every year they bring out a report of like a global IT report. And according to that, this year India's standing is at 68th place. At least we are happy that since last year, because last year we were at 69th place in that. Finland is the one at the top in that in terms of IT readiness index. And most of the countries, they are from the European region. Now, this puts us at a very convenient level in the sense that nowadays, due to various either the advancements in technological processes, products, or government regulations, or the processes, products, or government regulations, or the popularity of social media among the masses, it has put us in a very interesting situation. You may be aware about New Media Consortium, which is a sort of NGO in US based, and every year they try to identify the most significant 6 kind of technologies which may be impacting the higher education sector, and they classify them into 3 groups. Those technologies which are either just we are on the threshold of using them, or say up to 1 year they will be with us, that classification. The second is within 2 to 3 years, and the third classification according to them is around which we will be using them within next 4 to 5 years. Last year, their report indicated that mobile applications and tablet computing there, and we all know that even we did the experiment with Akash tablet, and then since the Canadian-based company could not supply it as per the orders received by them, so in the meantime other players, they entered into the situation, and now the mobile technology and the tablet computing, etc., it's very much there in the classrooms. But this year, what they have found that the most immediate technologies which are there on the threshold, which are being used now, or they may take at least less than 1 year, are the flipped classrooms and learning analytics. Rimaji has excellently presented on flipped classroom, and I think I can add little bit to that in the sense Professor Pant is here. He was the chief architect of the, perhaps I can claim it as the first ever MOOC on open educational resources in India, and in a way because there are other experiments. And therein we had around more than 1,500 participants into it from around 80 countries of the world. And there we tried this flipped classroom model, which was in a way completely online short. The participants, they were around all these countries, and they found the clarification of the content to understand something about. Basically, that session was on understanding open licenses, Creative Commons licenses, because it's very important for teachers and for researchers how to use the materials created or owned by others. So these things are learning analytics, the big data. It is coming in a very big way with us for the administrators, for the teachers, for the institutions, because with the social media, lot of data is being generated every second. Even Professor Pant was telling that all these slides, they have already been tweeted, and I'm sure that they are being retweeted now as we keep on speaking. So it's just adding to the data, and to make some sense out of that. Sometimes we, even the Facebook and the Google, they are also blamed that they are trying to, they say that we are trying to analyze user behavior, but like that. So that kind of analysis. The another thing which is presumed to be in effect within next 2 to 3 years are 3D printing and games and gamification. Because as per, if you know that what we call as the triangle of learning, in that we say that the simulation, if you remember the graph shown by Professor Pant in his presentation, the simulation was at the highest level. At lowest level it was the text. So these things, they are there, and the near future, not so distant future, but are the technologies which we presume are to be quantified self and virtual assistants. Now, these things, what they are indicating a trend that nowadays it is felt that more people, they are spending their time on social media rather than on television. And so there is a need to try to find out that how, and particularly we feel that we all understand it, the students, they have a very limited attention span. It can be diverted very easily. So taking our technologies in such a way that how these media which are available to us can be used for higher education, for school education, for non-formal education in an effective way is really very interesting to know.
Thank you, sir. I think you brought out some fantastic points here. One is, you touched on something that is favorite to me, which is data. I come from a data background and have worked with data for a long time. And one of the things that we always see when we use a lot of data is, how do you maintain a sense of anonymity? There is a sense of, online identity theft that we keep hearing about, sense of so many data-related, security issues that we hear about. credit cards being stolen and all that. So with so much of data that's being, more and more evolving, given the fact that we are having BYOD where, each learner is sharing more and more of their learning in the mix. On one side we have that, and the other side we have companies like IBM. Mr. Shreel is here from IBM, and known best for their Dr. Watson or Watson supercomputer, which beat the chess champion, right? So on one side you have so much of data coming up, sir. On the other side, and different paradigms coming up, BYOD and virtualization of so much of services coming up. How does this lead to, what kind of security risk do you perceive, and what kind of, things that IBM does in this area that can, alleviate these risks?
Yeah, thanks for this, and good morning. This is an interesting situation I've been capturing. So I'm basically a technology guy, but sitting with the forum here, picking up a lot of pain points. I'll pick up the security before that. When we go into a campus, I heard about a fact that teachers are not tech savvy. Students are more tech savvy than teachers. So there's a generation gap. Everything has got a thing which is a starting point for everybody. Students have a different starting point for technology vis-a-vis the teachers had. So IBM does an interesting thing around here. Why we talked about in the sense tablet, Akash versus this versus that. So why not let anybody use whatever they are comfortable with? Say a teacher is comfortable with a large screen with a keyboard, sitting on a desk vis-a-vis a student with a mobile device. Objective is to learn.
Yes.
So why not technology enable all of them to work, collaborate, and communicate, and achieve the target of learning rather than binding or relearning about a technology which teacher may say is no good for me, I can't see big screens or whatever reason. So IBM provides a platform at the back end, starting from the network, which can be a wireless network on a campus, which let anybody communicate with various stakeholders in the total learning system has got different requirements. So they have different way of communicating. So it enables with a platform at the back end network, which gives you a seamless experience on your device and access to the information which is relevant to you on campus and as well as off campus. Now the next thing is what I was doing in the school, or I was preparing a lecture here. Part of it I may like to do it from home before coming to school. So you should have a seamless experience. It's not that I'm carrying CDs, copying there, making the life messy. What I will create should be available where I go through whatever device we do. So that's the kind of enablement we do at the back end. And this enablement definitely comes with the challenges around security. So security starts from various aspects again. Security can be driven through a policy of an organization where particular institute may say visiting this site is a security issue for me. Vis-a-vis taking a device into an area can be a security issue. So there are various aspects of security. We address that. We heard about in this conversation itself some time back that people were talking about access to a particular lab. That's purely a physical access. Analyzing videos on a campus to tie it to an access or any disaster reaction team, wherein say for example you find a lot of people grouping into a particular area and a door is locked because of some fire or something. Even a video analytics can go analyze it and open the door on its own through IT rather than somebody hunting for the keys for the door. So this is deploying IT for the security. So I was touching the gamut of the security. The content which you talked about, the data which is again yes. So IBM has got solutions and we have probes to monitor that patterns of threat on the network across the globe and keep on releasing a threat advisory which can help you even before that threat hits you or your campus or your data. So that's the data side security to the physical security to the analytics on the video. So that's how we have solutions around all aspects of the life.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir. There are many perspectives here, but if we have to take a journey back where technology really started into education, I think we can, it's basically like going the Buddha's sayings, that if the path ahead looks a lot of bumps, you go back to where you started, go back to the earth, and you'll find the solution for it. I think the starting point for when the technology came into education is technology for creating content, right? We're still talking about lesson plan, which is 18th century, then we have instructional design of the 19th century, then we have learning design, which is much more, current. So we have an expert, and ma'am, if you'd like to share, from the content journey, what has the journey been, what has the transformation been, and how does that contribute to this whole, embracing the ICT in technology?
Yeah.
In education.
Good morning, everybody. You know what? When I walked into this gathering today, I felt like the Indigo Jekyll, because I started my career as a teacher, and down the line, I got into e-learning, and today, I see that either there are technology specialists over here, or there are education specialists over here. And because of my journey and being associated with the corporate world, I felt that, okay, I don't fit there and I don't fit here, because I'm not a technology specialist and I'm no longer an education specialist. And I must say that when EdTech Review, invited me to be part of this conference, it was like a little, that the door opened a little bit, and I said, okay, now I'm going to put my foot in and go in there, right? I want to be with. So, content development has really, evolved over a period of time. And I have to say that I would like to, just go back to what Kirti said about MOOCs being, useful for higher education and adult learning and not for K-12. I would like to say that as educational institutions, we have to be forward-looking. And MOOCs may happen in schools anytime. It's already started happening. I believe there is, an initiative being taken abroad by someone to start K-12 MOOCs. Now, if that happens, and that will happen, I would like to share an interesting anecdote that I heard at a workshop held by a design thinker from Italy called Fabiano. He talked about organizations saying that there are three kinds of institutions. There is one which is an elephant institution, which is always trying to catch up. And there is a butterfly institution which, flits from flavor of the month. It's like the flavor of the month. So today it's MOOCs, tomorrow it's something else, day after it will be something else. And there are organizations that are bat organizations or institutions, which are like, they sense, they use their senses to, how bats navigate in the dark, basically. So the future is like dark. You don't know what's going to happen, but then you have to sense and you have to, go with it. So I feel personally, as an outsider of an educational institution, that probably education institutions should be like bat organizations and sense what's going to happen in the future and prepare not only their teachers as well as, their students to, this thing for the future. Now, having said that, how does it impact content creation or content development? We heard about flipped classrooms also. I would say that when I moved out of, being a teacher to corporate training, the first thing I learned is andragogy. That's something you mentioned, which is like, adult learning. Now, I would say that, so there's this distinction of pedagogy and andragogy. Now, here we're talking about flipped classrooms, flipping everything in the way it happens in the classroom. And I think the time has come to move from pedagogy to andragogy. Now, not call andragogy as adult learning, but look at the principles of andragogy. What are the principles of andragogy? They are like, that adults come with some knowledge, so appreciate that knowledge. I am saying that today students in your classroom also come with some knowledge, because the knowledge is all out there. Students access the net, go through everything, and then they come to the classroom. Okay, and adults want learning to be meaningful, relevant. They will learn only if there's a need to learn. Students have become like that. If you cannot connect what they're learning with what they'll do or how they will use it, they're not going to be interested, right? So I think in that sense, what teachers learn and educationists learn, and I have been a B.Ed student myself, is the what and the why behind learning and teaching. The how or the methodology of developing that creative learning piece. or something that will pull the students, right, immerse the students, is somehow not given much attention. You have practice teaching classes, you go and you've been given a formula, okay, begin with getting the attention of the student, so you use that template and do it. But given the fact that the way technology has, kind of touched every one's life, I think somewhere there has to be a little more focus on the how of developing the content if you're going to use, multimedia online, where it's a pull and not a push so much. And I think there probably the instructional design principles, or what we call, in the ID world, the ADDIE model, there's a whole process, analysis, design, development, implementation, and evaluating. Has what is it, the content that I've created, has that actually been effective in meeting the outcome that I set out to achieve? So these are the methodologies I feel where teachers need to be, trained, and they need to know a lot about it, right? So that's the thing I have. And given the fact that there's, the whole thing about using social media for teaching and learning, and students are all out there. So it's like, how do you use the existing stuff to enhance the teaching experiences? Because students are all out there, and people have started doing that.
Thank you, ma'am. Again, we have heard different perspectives here. One is on the technology itself and on the content, and from a emerging trends perspective. Ma'am, I would like to go back to you. You were talking about TPAC as a way of implementation. Now, implementation starts with planning. We go, either as a policy or as a much higher level of planning takes place. Do you see, how do you see policy or planning being as effective in tackling some of these challenges? I mean, what kind of tips do you have from a planning perspective? Because as a consumer, you would have started that, your implementation journey would have started there. If you could share some of the solutions for the issues that you're facing.
Yeah, planning plays a very, very important role. You have to, before delivering anything to the end users, as my role requires, dealing with adults, which is the teachers, I have to really plan things in advance. And depending on, mostly, I will talk in terms of giving you more examples from my perspective. If I see, in terms of teacher training, normally my planning starts with what kind of a subject I'm dealing with. So I normally pick up the teachers from the subject specific backgrounds. And after then the next step is what kind of a age group these teachers are dealing with. That's the next stage. So, and then I go through to the curriculum of that different age group. Say I'm dealing with the teachers of middle school, and say for example science, then I will really look into the curriculum of middle school and the science background of 6 to 8, and accordingly plan my integrational strategies with them. As Purnima ma'am has already explained about, there is a need to have the training of the teachers, keeping in mind lots of e-content which is already available. So we have to talk about various aspects like Creative Commons license, and how they can pick up the already ready material and how that can be integrated in the specific lesson. So the entire planning has to be done prior to the training session, so that the teachers are aware what is going to be the learning outcome and they can prepare accordingly. Some of the, before doing any kind of a training session, most of the time I give them some hands-on material prior to the session, so that they are slightly ready with whatever I'm going to deal with. And most of the time I have to, after doing a session, I do take up a follow-up session, and maybe I go and observe their classes to identify which way it has been, whether whatever objectives have been set, are they being met in an appropriate manner as we have discussed so far. So a complete cycle is sort of a planning, and then plan, then train, and then implement, and then maybe re-evaluate, seeking the feedbacks from the students as well as with the teachers. We recreate another set of a training material for the teachers according to their requirements. So that's how, I mean, this cycle is being used for doing my training session. That's what I do normally in my, perspective.
Thank you, ma'am. That's a fantastic school perspective, sir. I would like to hear from you about the higher education perspective from a collaboration. How do you bring it? You're talking about Twitter, gamification, all that. How do you actually integrate that into the learning experience? Because that's going to take a lot more than just sage on the stage approach.
I think I would like to classify into 4 groups that how we can deal with it. The first is to plan about content and curricula. That's most important because we have to nowadays like the trend is on multidisciplinary or cross-disciplinary approach where there are super specialties but they are merging with each other also and new areas are coming up. And then we have open content, open access, open educational resources are catching up. And there are various benefits of that. Why they are rising it, there are certain limitations of the existing system. That's why there are out many people either maybe due to some kind of institutional barriers or financial barriers or access barriers like that, whatever is there. Then orienting our content or curriculum according to the emotional intelligence of the learners. That becomes. The second part would, I think that important here is the assessment, the various kind of assessment formats which are in practice and what needs to be done according to that and how to lay more stress on formative assessments. Here, an important factor which is coming up and I think I can relate it to an idea given by our late Prime Minister, Mr. Rajiv Gandhi, when he said that delinking of the degrees from the jobs. A person who is looking for some sort of government job, but since if he or she doesn't have a degree, merely by that fact a job cannot be given to them, even the person is quite skillful in some way, that becomes. So here what we need to think is about how we can pay more attention to the recognition of prior learning or recognition of non-formal or informal learning. That is, and that's why the stress is on. I don't know who is making noise. Okay, so the establishment of the setting up of National Skills Development Corporation is a step towards that, because what we need is more skill-based competence among our learners. And particularly there are studies initially it started with Japan thinking that the geriatric section is increasing and there is a huge gap even in India within the next 5 years and 10 years. Most of the people when they will retire from the job, who is there to take their place and the kind of skills what are needed there. So I think to consider about the recognition of informal and non-formal learning is another important thing. Then we have to take care of learning practices and teaching practices which are in vogue currently. Perhaps maybe learning by exploring, creating, playing and through self-regulated learning or peer-to-peer collaboration, and particularly in this age when we think that most of the people, the students, when they have their own social networks, and how the peer-to-peer learning can take it into some sort of and interestingly we have seen the emergence and the rise of MOOCs. So at one end we are speaking of massive open online courses, then on another side there are coming up small private online courses also which cater to a particular segment, maybe say one-to-one or a very small scale. We call them as small private online courses. And then from teaching practices point of view, say taking care of multi-learning styles of the students in what conditions the learning is enhanced to that. So maybe perhaps we can relate it to the education sector in that way.
That's fantastic, sir. Thank you. Now, the agenda in front of us is we need to embrace this change. And one of the things as an industry leader, sir, for embracing this change, how does IBM contribute in terms of leadership in this area? Basically, all the trends that we see have come out of a lot of research. IBM even published a recent research finding about the trends that are going forward. As a market leader, how do you, take the leadership to enable embracing this change?
So the most important thing which is very common in this discussion is we are talking about the content. So IBM provides a platform which is very interesting, which lets you create content which is reusable and is accessible from device independent platforms. We had a discussion about Android versus Microsoft versus blah blah blah. So the point here is, why not have a platform? I do a development once, and irrespective of the type of device, based on the choice of the consumer of the information, it should be delivered. Interesting fact, we have a platform in place. Reusability, I used a word, reusability. What do I mean by it? A physics chapter on a concept typically would have some text, some graphics. Now the same chapter, if being taught in a different part of the country, may have a different preferred language. Why reinvest in doing the same thing again and again? So why not capture the content in a modular form where graphics are consistent across, because the image will remain image, wherever language we are doing, and have a content captured in a format where based on the consumer, either it gets translated on the fly to the local language, or maybe with some minor intervention depending on the complexity and availability of the technology to translate. But the fact is, investment in doing that content is done only once. So we are reusing the knowledge, and the same content. Apart from that, there's another platform where we collaboratively generate this content. Now, teacher while teaching find out a point or a discussion or an example coming in from a student, which should be part of the content. It gets captured during the delivery of the content in the classroom and can be reused as is when delivering the next lecture and becomes part of the basic content. So these are the various capabilities which as IBM we provide on various platforms to develop, store and disseminate.
Right.
Apart from that, all this exercise at the back end creates lots and lots of data, right? So what to do with it? So there are tools available to analyze, define trends, or use the information by various stakeholders. A teacher may like to see the same information in a different way vis-a-vis an organization who is running an institute, right? They have a different interest. So the same information with a different views and can be analyzed and presented to the different stakeholders as per their area of interest.
Evidence-based policy making of decision making. Very nice,
Exactly.
very nice. Again, ma'am, now I come back to you at the last for one specific reason, which is, again, when we are leaving on a journey, we always have to sometimes pause and look back at where we started. I believe that in this panel, you represent that start. So, as somebody who's emerged from the teaching fraternity and embraced technology personally as an individual, what would you think are some of the key areas where educators have to focus to embrace new ICT?
The journey, yes, also, I have seen it evolving, because when we started with using technology for teaching, it was like training, and it was mostly training on software applications, So, because it emerged from the technology domain. And I have seen it evolve from the behaviorist school of thought in terms for content development, where, you think that the student is a passive recipient of information, too constructivist. So it was like a pendulum swing, then suddenly there was this whole thing of using games for teaching, and making interactivity levels real high and all that. And then I think now it's sort of kind of found a balance, and that's where we have something called blended learning. So there is recognition that all kinds of techniques in some way or the other, whether they're the cognitive methods of teaching or the constructivist or the behaviorist, every one of them has a place. It's like striking the right blend of all these, which is important, and that's what I have seen as it has evolved over a period of time. So what is it that educators and educationists need to focus on? I think I would emphasize on two things. One is they're all very familiar with the what and the why, as I was saying. The what being the three schools of thought, and the why being, again, a lot of principles like maybe Piaget's cognitive development stages and stuff like that. But I think now they specifically need to focus on two things. One is the methodology of developing a module. And they have to realize and accept the fact that there's a lot in design thinking. That's where it's instructional design. Design thinking is like, it's what if as against what is, and a lot of analysis of the, environment, the user, the end user, and all that. So I think they'll gain a lot by adopting that methodology. They will improve the way they create, so it won't be like state PowerPoint presentations or, stuff created with authoring tools. Sometimes even that's not needed. I completely agree with Professor Pant when he said, he really struck a chord when, he said that, power corrupts politicians and,
I think that's where we started, and that's going to be at the heart of this journey, right? I'll kind of have to quickly summarize. We've listened to one, one angle which is purely a technology-based angle, one angle where somebody is in between a practitioner as well as somebody who's done the technology journey, and then two angles from a school education and a higher education sector where they are actually implementing it. So, but one point remains common across all of them, right? The point that remains common is technology is going to continue to emerge. We had books have been there only for 300 years. Chalk, piece and board has been there only for a few hundred years. So technology of how we disseminate learning is going to continue to exist. And I think what we really need to focus on is, as the saying goes, change is the only constant. And also, as better said by our father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, if you want to see the change, you have to be the change, right? So that's the biggest key takeaway here, that to embrace new ICT in education, it doesn't matter if you're ready or not, just take it and run with it. I think we'll have a fantastic journey forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Vadrajan. Thanks to the esteemed panel.